Hi, this is Sarah Neer. I'm the Director of MBA Admissions at the Darden School of Business, and I'm here to welcome you to watch our case method video. We have Peter Rodriguez, professor on the Darden faculty, here to talk with you as we go along through the video about the case method in action in an actual class with current students. So we hope you enjoy the video, and we hope to see you at Darden sometime in the future.
Today I think is a very interesting case. It happens really exactly 10 years ago. Which may seem too distant to be really relevant, but in fact, I think
the art of doing a case is in part taking a specific example and capturing from it what's really relevant, what's really universal. So we look at a case 10 years ago that's about world financial markets in turmoil, and in looking at that, what we can see is a glimmer of what happens each and every day, and in particular, what arises on occasion when the world hiccups, when the financial markets begin to bend over themselves. And in taking from this case discussion, we don't really want to remember exactly what happened or its historical importance or its relevance. What we want to remember was, what are the leadership experiences that took place then? What are the factual implications of what the leaders drew from that event? What can managers learn from looking back at that and thinking back on that experience 10 years later?
At the beginning of the case, you're sort of presented with this view of a country that maybe you're not too familiar with. You get some data that tells you about the country. You get a little bit of an insight into what's taking place, and you're really put into the position of Carlos Mossad. And the view of the case is that Mossad has a dilemma in front of him. He's trying to decide what to do. We want to slip into his shoes, as it were, and sort of ask the same sort of question. What is Mossad's dilemma? What is it that this case is about? What is he facing? What's the base? The cold call is a great tradition at Darden, and it's what generates a lot of anxiety before class and a lot of great discussion after class. But a cold call is, you come into that room, no one knows exactly what the first question will be, and they certainly don't know who's going to be asked that question. But you introduce the class, you focus on one person, and you say, you're going to lead us off today. Here's the big question of the day. Go. You're the star. Take us where we need to go. Tell us what we need to know and lead the discussion. So be a leader in that moment. Being on the cold call is being asked to be a leader, and it happens every day in every class.
Kind of are getting scared, and so they're taking their money out of Chile. And
what does East Asia have to do with Chile? I mean, we know Easter Island, I guess, technically in Asia, but other than that, what's the story?
I think the connection is that they are both emerging economies.
But that doesn't quite get us to dilemma, right? Because now you have the situation, it's pretty standard. I mean, this type of thing happens. Investors get nervous, they reallocate, they pull out of emerging markets. But a dilemma would mean that that's a problem that he can't solve. I mean, what's an easy solution? If you're worried about the Chilean peso falling in value, somebody give me an option. What do you think Mossad's big worries are? Is he more of a guy who's worried about the exchange rate? Is he worried about unemployment? Is he worried about, I don't know. What do you think makes this guy tick? Yeah, Brendan.
I was going to say, I mean, in addition to exchange rate and inflation, which I think are two primary concerns for him, I think exports, net exports are also a big concern of his. The issue with keeping interest rates high in order to curb inflation is that you're putting some upward pressure on your exchange rate, and in turn, that is making your net exports or your exports less attractive to foreign investors.
One thing that actually kind of stood out to me was the URR, the unremunerated reserve requirement.
I'm glad you said that, because it's hard to say one, but tell me about that, because that's a key feature here, an unremunerated reserve requirement. What is that?
So what that pretty much is saying is that all the capital inflows that are coming in, 20% of those have to be put into non-interest-bearing accounts. So essentially what that's doing is keeping the capital within the country, and it's keeping it in there, because if you want to invest and make money with the capital that you're bringing in, then you need to put up a little bit of a deposit, essentially.
How do you feel about that if you're an investor? You want to go to Chile? Chip, what do you think?
You don't really like that they're essentially restricting capital flows.
Yeah.
So it's that impossible trinity that
yes.
we have up there. It looks like they're kind of dancing between,
Chip brings up, he uses this symbol. He says, oh, it's that interesting triangle thing, which is the impossible trinity. This is a trade-off that monetary policymakers face, and Chip is right on target. He understands from his reading, from prior preparation, that Chile faces a choice, and they have a small set. And we can understand what they're going to do based on this little example that we've used in previous classes. It comes up one other time as well, when a Venezuelan student talks about the really unholy trinity, and he's using a home country example that's true to him that exactly relates to what Chip says was the theoretical argument. So in that sort of small circle, we had a theoretical argument, a personal experience, and a decision criterion that we could really emphasize in the classroom. And this is just a cover charge. It's like, hey, everybody wants in, so the cover is way high. And there's a line out front with a big guy who's like, I don't like the way you look. And so that's kind of this URR. It's an interesting little addition that you don't see a lot of places, and it tells you something about Chile. Christoph.
Yeah, I just feel like it's a little inappropriate, though, given the current environment. I mean, we're trying to keep people away because, we don't want certain people in our club. But look, man, Asian crisis on the horizon. We'll take anybody in our club nowadays.
Yeah. So let's take a little bit deeper look at this, and then I want to lay out some options. But if we could analyze the numbers a bit, I think it's just good practice. We're going to do that a lot more. Do you like foreign direct investment?
I love it.
You do? Why do you love it so much, Zoe? Speak to your passion.
Well, it seems to be that they are long-term investments.
Yeah.
And they're investments in the growth of the country.
We always say that FDI is more like marriage, right? It's a long-term, and portfolio is more like dating. Right, portfolio is like, I'll take a run at that. I'll see if I can put my money in. If it doesn't work out, I'll be out tomorrow and on to the next wonderful emerging market. But FDI is, hey, I built a factory there. I can't just pick it up and go when the winds change a little bit. I'm committed. One of the daunting things about a case is that you might have to use some very technical tools that many people won't be familiar with or won't be comfortable with. But that's okay, because in the room you have experts that you can lean on. And so when we come to those moments where we're using a difficult technique, a sophisticated mathematical tool, we understand that some people may have to struggle through it. That's completely fine. But if their struggle gets to be too much of a challenge, we'll throw it over to an expert, and the experts can clarify. And in that moment, they have the opportunity to practice not only using a tool they know well, but explaining it to someone who doesn't know it well. And we find that that's often a very valuable technique that you need to be a leader, to be a good manager.
Also, I think to Bodge's point earlier when he was saying, since your money supply is shrinking, your economy is shrinking, the flip side, the difference with Argentina here is you actually do have your monetary policy lever to some extent. I know you have a crawling peg, but you can actually use that lever in addition to fiscal policy, which is what Nate and Ben are saying.
Carlos.
Just as a comment, when the president of Venezuela came to the government in 1999, all the people started to get the money out of the country, and the reserve started almost going to zero.
Because everybody's taking that currency, they're saying, get rid of it, I want dollars.
Yeah, I don't want bolívares, I want hard money, hard currency.
It's absolutely invaluable to have international students. You cannot have the same depth of discussion, the same intrigue in the case that you would if you only had domestic students. So without having diversity in the classroom, and not just international diversity, but all types of diversity, you just couldn't leverage and make the most out of that discussion. So we have the situation, I think we kind of have most of it, sort of back to the original statement. The Asian financial crisis is potentially sending money out of Chile at a time when exports are weak, at a time when the economy is okay, it's had strong performance, but they still have concerns about inflation. And the question is just sort of what do they do? And it's an important question for Mossad because he's obviously Chilean and this is his job. But from the outside, it's important too. If you have money that you're earning in Chile, if you're a multinational there, you're worried. Maybe this exchange rate goes down a lot, and all those pesos I earned that used to be valuable to me are now worth zilch. Or maybe I bought in, I paid the cover charge, I went into Chile big and strong, and the DJ just sucks. And it's terrible, and nobody's there. And, you're like, bought into the whole batch. So now,
but with the URR, isn't
once there's a sufficient set of chewy subjects on the board, the next part is to begin to use your tools of analysis, to begin to whittle them down, to begin to separate what makes sense and what needs further analysis and what doesn't,
to try to get some fact from fiction and to really develop the basis for some final decision making.
Who wants number 2? Better one. Well, more. Britt, why do you like this one?
I think it's going to give them, it's going to take them away from the copper, as Scott was saying, is the copper volatility.
So you're really kind of attracted to this, hey, look, we have a surplus, let's spend some money and work on things domestically.
Encourage privatization, encourage investment in other commodities and exports to get away from the copper risk.
Okay. And you know, you're using reserves, but you don't know, you might be running out. I mean, you are slipping on them. You're still not worried about that?
Not as much. I think you've got to get rid of that copper risk.
Okay. So you think the long term, it's kind of like saying the long term problem is that we're just an all copper all the time place and we have to do something about that. Other thoughts, Shannon?
Well, my concern with it is the reality is they're extremely dependent on their copper exports. So this will, can raise their exchange rate. So my worry is that, and the immediate result is that it makes that situation worse.
The sort of question is kind of this bigger picture.
What we always want to do at the end of the case is to reveal exactly what may have taken place. If it's a historical case, we have people go through this decision-making analysis and commit. I would have done X in this particular situation, or I would have chosen option Y in this particular situation. We then reveal to them what actually took place.
Guess what they did? Only 3 people voted for that, because only 3 people have as hard a heart that it took. What Mossad did is he said, you know what? His view was, when he sort of spoke it out, was we're about stability. What makes Chile relevant to the world is that it is a small economy, but it's predictable, it's stable, it's safe. We make a promise, we keep it. Now, of course, what happens? Real GDP falls, goes through the floor, you get a recession, you get unemployment. Inflation is down, great. You win that victory, but that's a big change. You go from 6% unemployment to 10%. It's a lot of people really fast. And what was the crime again? What was it? Was it bad lending? Was it poor proper investment? It was just, hey, the world hiccuped, you're small. Chile is still a great, strong market. They still have very good growth. But that, the social cost, and it just came out of nowhere, right? I mean, this is 2008, by the way. It's just you're not reading about it so much yet, but you get this big shift in investors' expectations. They're worried about this or that happening. We think about the big players, the smaller players, even if they're really well behaved, if you will, get moved around in this way and then make this trade-off. And you can see how the sort of whims and beliefs of investors around the world really exert a real social cost here, and I think that's kind of the message. So when we come back tomorrow, we'll talk about South Africa. We'll see this again. We'll come back again and we'll see it in India and in China. And we'll think about how valuable it is to peg or not to peg. When is it appropriate? It's a great question. And when is it not? What's the cost? So with that, we'll be done. Thank you for your attention today, and see you tomorrow.
After the case is over, it can be some of the most engaging conversations you have all week. They get interested. They finally figure out, hey, I understood something fairly difficult, new, and technical. It changes the way I think about the world, and they want to talk about it all the time. One of the more difficult things you have is getting out of the classroom, fielding all the questions in time to make space for the next professor to come in. Well, they talk about the cases all the time. And in fact, when you talk to alums, they remember cases years and years and years into the future. So they carry case studies with them all the time.